is up, everybody? Karma Nation, everybody out there tuning into the cash process. We are now heading into week 8. At the end of this week, it'll be the halfway point of the season. I'm your host, AC, with DFS Karma and betkarma.com. And I, as always, have my co-captain, Ben Hoffler. How are you doing today, Ben? It's early on a Tuesday right now. We're going to talk everything about our cash games last week. We'll talk a little bit about tournaments. We'll talk some injury news. And then we'll get into the preceding week ahead, which I think is a little bit different than some weeks prior. Ben, how was your week last week? Any adjustments that you would have made, plus, minus, and different? And then how did FanDuel and DraftKings go for you overall?
Yeah, I got absolutely shit on. No way around it. So I'm excited for this week because I just want to get the taste out of my mouth from last week because that was bad. Looking back, I mean, I should have played Devontae Adams as a pretty easy play. He actually was pretty low owned on FanDuel compared to what he was on DraftKings, which I thought was interesting. And then I went DK over Lockett on both sites, which sucked as well. I just had a bad week, but I think in terms of actually making a mistake, not playing Adams was probably a mistake. DK and Lockett, those guys are kind of interchangeable. They're going to trade big weeks, so that's why it's hard to play those guys in cash because you never know which one's going to go off. And I actually noticed that some of the really good players that I study didn't play either of them, which would make sense considering that it's so easy for either of them to have a big game when they're that dominant in that offense. But yeah, I'm ready for this week. This week does, just at first glance, look really interesting. Not sure where people are going to go. So I'm excited to get the taste of last week out of my mouth.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I hate saying it, with you. It's like you have a big losing week or whatnot, and it's honestly a good medicine, right? Like sometimes you just need, like, dude, you've been rolling. You haven't lost on FanDuel until week 7. Think about that. So now you get back on the horse and you continue forward. For what it's worth, I mean, call it fluff, but I feel those weeks in particular myself that I have those losing weeks. I feel like I do. I bounce back. I maybe put a little bit more energy into studying and analyzing and checking out all the content, of course, at dfskarma.com. Shout out to the website. But listening to podcasts and just kind of doing your due diligence, looking through all of our player projections, and all the prop stuff is huge for me at betkarma.com. I use that a lot to go through things and make my final decisions on the weekend. For myself, I did fade Devontae Adams on FanDuel. I did have a loss on there, and frankly, I had a really good lineup. And shout out to me for making a lazy non-decision. We talk about things you can do to get better. I damn well knew, Ben. I knew I was cashing with ease going into the night game, and really all I had going for me was one wide receiver slot, which was DK Metcalf. I knew he was the chalk play. I knew he was going to be 70% owned. I'm talking FanDuel right now in a vacuum. And just the way that I kind of was looking at the math, I thought I'd be fine if DK just did his thing. I probably would have I probably would have cashed. But I debated making the Lockett pivot just for ownership leverage, and my dumbass just kind of fell asleep a little bit early and woke up and the game started. So I made a bad non-decision, and I thought about it like throughout the afternoon. I'm like, all right, I see where my lineup's trending. I probably should consider this leverage, even though I liked DK Metcalf on FanDuel as the better play. I ultimately did not make that decision, and it cost me on FanDuel. I think I had to 4-3 on that site, and on DraftKings, I had a great week. I mean, really unbelievable week, to be honest. Started the season 0-3. I'm now 4-3, so I've had 4 wins in a row. I did obviously play Devontae. That was huge. I did not have anybody in the late game, which, of course, ended up ruining me. But in full disclosure, this was, the same core play. That's what we talk about on our website. It's a product that myself, Ben, a lot of the other staff offers. I mean, there's several products and categories on the site that you can choose to procure. But this same core play is what I play in cash games, in high dollar single entry stuff. And it was almost unbelievable. I texted Ben, and yeah, I was literally, again, for the second or third time this year, winning $85,000 going into the night game. Now, I knew that wouldn't theoretically hold. However, Ben, I was doing the math. I don't like doing that game. And I kind of came to the conclusion that I had a strong chance of holding because my lineup just went off during the normal main slate. And even if, the DK Metcalfs, the Tyler Lockett's, the Murrays, the Wilsons, even if they had a pretty good games, I was still going to be very close to cashing fairly big. I didn't think I'd hold 85. I mean, in fact, I knew I wouldn't, but there was a strong chance that that same core play that we sell on the website would have held strong for probably 30, 35, even 40,000. Now, when a wide receiver drops 56 points, it is hard to hold on at the end of the day. The lineup did hold strong for about 14, 15, 16,000. Ultimately, I won some small GBPs with another lineup. So, altogether it was a very good week. Another five-figure win. And again, I mean, these are the same things that you can see what I am doing at dfskarma.com. Click the orange subscription button. So that was my week, another great week. But we move forward, we wash our hands, and like you said, let's get some of this taste out of our mouth because I am pissed about FanDuel, and we'll start talking about the week ahead, week 8, dynamic slate again, kind of like we said the last couple of weeks, but for a different variety. I feel like just taking a quick glance, like sure, there's games with 50-point totals, but that's becoming more of the norm. I am seeing a lot of money early in the week. I'm looking at the live odds page at betkarma.com, and there is a ton of money coming in on the unders, which you would naturally assume on some of these games. Just looking at them, they don't look like great fantasy firework type matchups. But let's get into it. We'll start at quarterback. We'll probably start talking about some different routes this week than we have in previous weeks, Ben. So why don't you lead it off? Who are we looking at early in the week? DraftKings cash games.
Yeah, so this looks a lot like 2 weeks ago when there was no quarterbacks to play, which was the week. I don't remember who I played on DraftKings. I played Stafford on FanDuel that week. That was the week he stunk. 2 weeks ago, there was just no quarterbacks really to play. This looks like that. Like you have Mahomes against the Jets, but he's 8,100. Obviously, you have no confidence in the Jets keeping that game remotely close. You have Russ, who is a great play at home at all times, but he's 7,800, so it's kind of tough to get to 7,800 in cash games, especially when Russ had a decent game running the ball last week, but that was really the most he's ran the ball in a minute. And then I think if you pick one of these guys up top that people will pay for, it's probably Rodgers. Bad Vikings defense. Rodgers is at home. He's had a couple big games recently. I think I don't like to play Rodgers in cash because he doesn't really run, but I think if people spend up, that's where they will go, which is hilarious because Lamar is cheaper than him. And if you told us last year that Lamar Jackson was going to be $7,400 on DraftKings and Rodgers was more expensive, you would be playing Lamar every time. But the Pittsburgh defense is legit, man. And I mean, he had that big game in their last game, but it's kind of tough to trust him. I guess that is a play that maybe could pick up some traction, but probably not for cash games. So I think the two guys that stood out to me are cheaper. Joe Burrow at home against Tennessee, 6,200. I had Joe Burrow in my cash lineup until like Saturday night, which sucked that I ended up moving off that because he had a monster game. And then one that you brought up before we got here, Derek Carr. I can't believe I'm saying this, but he's on the road, but 5,500. I have zero confidence in the Browns stopping any opposing offense. So I do think he could beat value at 5,500, but I would probably rather find the $700 and play Burrow because he has that rushing ability. And when they get close, dude, they want him to run it in. Like they called a QB sneak from the 2 yard line. Like they do not care. They want Joe Burrow to punch it in when they get close.
Yeah, it's I kind of consider him as well. He was in one of my main three max entry teams, Joe Burrow, that is. And I considered him in cash games, and I don't know why I kind of ultimately really got away from it. I played Watson, who fared very well. Of course, it didn't just the way my lineup construction fit. I couldn't get up to Murray, even though I knew he was the chalk play on DraftKings. I mean, I really wanted to play Murray. Even debated Russ Wilson, obviously on FanDuel, but ultimately went a different route. I do think Derek Carr is definitely in play this week. 5,500 is pretty cheap if you actually look. He's hit value every game this season. And at the end of the day, I mean, as lame as it sounds, I am trying to generally just achieve that value play, especially at quarterback. I feel like it's going to allow me to do different things in my roster this week. So again, early in the week for me, it's Derek Carr. Like you said, it's Joe Burrow. I probably will consider, uh, granted, we get value. You know how it is later in the week. XYZ injury comes about, and like the Gio Bernards of the world become a thing. Of course, I will consider Aaron Rodgers in a vacuum seems very expensive, but you never know. I mean, some of these slates, man, we get this cheap value. I'll probably take a look at Tannehill coming off somewhat of a subpar game against Pittsburgh, which is what it is. I really wouldn't bake that into anything, but 6,800 kind of stands out a little bit. Other than that, I mean, no, nobody would play my boy Baker. There's just not too many sexy options that I like this week, which is why it's kind of like, man, we just drink our medicine and pay down. This is generally what we do anyways, more often than not. And yeah, Derek Carr is not going to make you feel good going into a slate, but the Browns are absolutely horrendous against the pass. So he should be fine. He should hit value. All right, let's go to running back then.
Yeah, early look at running back. I think you could maybe play both of Kamara and Henry if you want. There is some value at receiver, but it might be a week where we have to make a decision between those two. Michael Thomas, I do not think will play in this game, so that's a definite bump for Kamara. Tough matchup against the Bears, but I mean, he is the focal point of that offense with Thomas out, and you know that he isn't going to dominate in terms of rushing attempts, but he's going to be so involved in the passing game that it makes up for it, especially on DraftKings. So probably a better DK play than a FanDuel play this week. Henry, I mean, amazing spot. The Bengals are still going to be down. They're 2D linemen. I don't know about the linebacker that was out. We'll have to wait on that later in the week. But I mean, this is the matchup that Henry crushes in, right? Like you wish he was at home, but since he's horrible against the run, I think that we were all in on Kareem Hunt in this same exact spot last week. Henry's a safer bet than Hunt at this point, and dude, like I actually trust the Bengals offense to put up points, and the Titans have been in some of these shootouts, right? They were in a shootout against the Texans a couple weeks ago. They came back and they were in a little shootout against the Steelers after they got down big early. So I think the Bengals can put up points, and I think Henry, you know, 8K. I it's tough to pay that on DK where he doesn't catch passes, but I do think that he's a really good play as of right now.
Yeah, this is maybe it's just one of those weeks that it'll be another chalk festival Sunday party with the DFS bubble that we live in. But for me, it's like I take a quick glance at this slate. I'm looking at running backs. You have to win at running backs. I mean, if you don't get running backs right, you definitely lose. For me, it's Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, and Kareem Hunt. I just feel like, fast forward to Sunday morning, granted that there's no crazy injury news. And like I said, the Gio Bernards of the world become available in a vacuum. I just feel like those are the three guys I'm playing this week because there's not too much else I trust. I see things out there, I guess, that I like. I mean, there's some value. There's potentially some value. Like Miles Gaskin's done very well. I mean, he's going against the Rams, but 5,200 seems pretty cheap for him. I guess if you did, want to, the dangerous thing, the trap, I feel like people fall into is, they'll pay up for Devonta Adams, which I'm not saying it's a bad play. I just, what is he, 8,800 this week? We haven't even got to wide receiver yet, but, I've made mistakes like that in the past where you start chasing those huge ceiling wide receiver games, and it's just not what you want to be doing long term. So I'm probably paying up for all running backs this week, just again, early in the week, unless something else comes about. I really don't see too much else theoretically that I like, and I want to go with those three guys. Like those are my
Yeah,
guys.
I think Jonathan Taylor's in the conversation as well. Detroit's just so bad
True.
against the run, but he's right there with Hunt, so he'd be picking between those two, I think, which will be a decision we'll have to make later on in the week.
Oh, we probably should say because it's a San Francisco situation. Like Hasty could potentially be the guy at 5K, right? I mean,
Yeah, and
Wilson's out.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. So all of Chris Carson, Carlos Hyde, and Travis Homer are hurt.
Oh
So
God.
like if there was a situation where all three of those guys were out, we could play DJ Dallas. He's 4K. Um,
Mm,
I actually kind of like DJ
great. Here we
Dallas.
go.
Yeah, so that could be the guy maybe later on in the week where if like for some reason all those guys were out, like we could play DJ Dallas at 4K. So that's something to monitor as the week goes on.
All right, let's go to wide receiver because we covered some of the other guys at running back now. Wide receiver, I'll start just because I kind of mentioned this. Like, I'm not calling it a bad play. Trust me. Don't get me on tape with that. Devonta Adams at 8,800 now. I mean, I've personally made these mistakes in the past. I don't think unless, like you just said, Ben, the DJ Dallases of the world, who I have no clue who he is, are a thing this week, and it's like almost mandatory that we play him. Which again, it's too early for that. But personally, I'm not going that route of spending up at 8,800. Are you for Devontae Adams?
Yeah, no. The only reason that not playing Adams was a mistake is because he was under 8K last week. When you start getting close to 9K, I can't pay that for a receiver generally in cash games.
I'll before you start taking the poll here, let me just address again, which I totally agree. I actually didn't say anything. The whole Seattle thing this year it's a messy situation week in and week out on both DraftKings and FanDuel. And I've gotten it right a couple times. I've gotten it wrong a couple times. And, a couple other times it's just like this week. It's like I didn't make the decision, even though I contemplated it all day. Obviously, Tyler Lockett is cheaper than DK Metcalf. I'm probably playing. Then again, I mean, we really do got to consider Tyler Lockett at 7,100, considering the running back situation, right? I just want to say, I know this is the cash process. We're talking about cash games value. DK Metcalf is obviously like the elite of elite tournament pivots this week. Granted that Tyler Lockett probably becomes fairly chalky considering the running back situation. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, people will want to chase it, just the big game as well. And it's not like it's a horrible matchup, so
It's
I think
not, yeah, it's not a horrible price either. It's 71. I mean, it's fair, right? I mean, it's not great, it's not cheap, but especially considering the circumstances, he should see just an elevated target, which is ridiculous to say. But yeah, I feel like Tyler Lockett is probably in cash game consideration.
yep.
Who else are you looking at?
I mean, I don't love any of these top guys. Like Thielen will pop, but we have a lot of historical data when it comes to it being a negative when it's the second divisional game, and these teams already played once, so that's probably an avoid for me when you talk about Thielen for 100 more than Lockett. I like we have to consider Keenan Allen. He's the same price that he was last week. Saw another freaking 12 targets, whatever it was, 13 targets. I mean, this Justin Herbert just loves this guy, and it's just too cheap. I don't care about the matchup. Like he's gonna get his targets regardless, so we have to consider him. But I would drop all the way down. I think Brandon Ayuk at 5,800. I think that's a lock play.
Hmm.
He's kind of like finally bumping up in this offense. This is a guy they drafted high. Really good matchup against Seattle, whose defense cannot stop anybody right now. Went 6 for 115 on 7 targets last week. Debo Samuel is not going to play in this game, so I think Ayuk is a lock right now at 5,800.
Debo's out. I didn't know he got
Yeah,
hurt.
yeah, he got hurt. He's not going to play.
Damn, he was playing late in that game too, and they were up like 30 points. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, Man, that's some interesting takes. I mean, I guess again early for me. I didn't consider Brandon Ayuk at all, but I guess that price can make a lot of sense, especially going against Seattle. Um, Trying to take a quick look here. Justin Jefferson, Kenny Galladay, 6,600. I don't think people are going back to that. Well, it's not like he's disappointed, but man, like, can the guy freaking get in the end zone? Like, what does it have to take? He should be smashing every week, you know.
I know. I was so
Um,
dude. I was so don't even get me. I was so tilted about Galladay last weekend, man.
why don't you talk about the Las Vegas situation? I think
Dude,
we
oh
need to talk
man,
about what receivers we're targeting this
it's
week there,
dude.
if
This
possible.
might not be the cash play, but this is Henry Ruggs week, dude. I have been waiting for this
Is it?
since week one, dude. He came out week one and just smashed that first drive.
Mhm.
Got tackled at the 1 or whatever it was, and then got hurt, and then was out forever. But now he's been back. Caught a long one last week. I mean, I can't have any confidence in the Browns stopping Henry Ruggs. Like, yeah, you normally want to target them over the middle of the field with a Waller or Renfro, and I think that Waller will definitely be in play when we talk about tight end. But at least for tournaments, I know this is a cash podcast, but for tournaments, I will have
Oh
Henry
God,
Ruggs for sure. 4,900.
I forgot about that. Yeah, I haven't even looked at tight end, but it's like we have to play Waller.
Yeah, dude. Like,
Like
oh,
it's
man.
too much. All right, real quick, I will say AJ Green sticks out to me 4,500. I guess I don't know the situation in T Higgins, but watching that game, it looked like he didn't come back in. He definitely got hurt late in the game. AJ Green, people want to make fun of him being washed and dust, blah blah blah. I mean, I feel like Twitter actually helps my DFS play at times And if the people want to think that, I get it. Like, he's not the same player, but he has seen 24 targets in the last 2 weeks. That's cash playable at 4,500 last time I checked. He's due to accidentally bink and fall in the end zone too. So who knows? Maybe he does become popular this week. I mean, I've already kind of got him pegged in my lineup early on, especially with T. Higgins being down. I'm sure if T. Higgins is out, that'll become much more popular. Um, Anything else? We could talk about our boy Hollywood Higgins,
Yeah.
4,200, right? I mean, are we playing him in cash games? That's highly considered in cash games.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm playing him as of now, but he's definitely in play at that price. Baker, this is Baker's boy, man. Like he peppered him as rookies, um, when he was a rookie, and he scored twice. Like once they started giving him the ball 2 weeks ago, he found the end zone. Obviously, a good game last week, and Odell's out, and then Marquez Callaway's really cheap as well. I'll have to consider him if Thomas is out. I mean, this dude Breeze was like peppering this dude. He saw 10 targets, and
Hmm.
he's actually good. Like they didn't move his price up at all. So if Thomas is out, he did like leave the game late, but I think he's gonna be fine. If he's healthy and in, we will have to consider it. I think at that price tag.
Hmm. Interesting. Anybody else cheaper that you're seeing that I'm not? I mean, Hunter Renfro probably is a good play. I'm just probably not going to play him unless you actually tell me to. I have to, Ben.
Yeah, I mean they're fully healthy for the most part at receiver now. He was more of a play like when Ruggs was out, but I mean I won't
Yeah.
be shocked like if I see him score a touchdown because the Browns are just so bad.
All right. Well, we'll talk about some other potential opportunities throughout the week in our Discord chat. Again, you can find that product under the subscriptions option at dfskarma.com. All right, let's go to tight end. I'm taking the lead on this because this is so easy. I don't even have to look this week. I don't care who's cheapy guy. I know Harrison Bryant, whatever. Probably could consider him in a vacuum if Hooper's out. But, I don't trust the Browns because I just wouldn't go there. I feel like that could be a trap, even though I like Harrison Bryant talent, by the way, is amazing. He fell to the Browns in the fourth round. They didn't want to take him. They talk about that often, but they were like forced to because they had like a second round grade. A lot of teams actually did have a late second round grade. I'm assuming people potentially could go there, but man, how do we not play Darren Waller this week? I just feel like it's the easiest slate for tight ends I've seen this entire year, but just put
Yeah,
him in
I
your
mean you
lineup. Like, you'll be dead. You'll be dead if you don't have Darren Waller. That's just my 2 cents. Knowing the Browns, I mean, he's gonna drop 20 to 25 DK points. Like, you can bank on it.
yeah, he is my favorite like higher tier play. I would love to get to him in cash if possible. There are some other plays like I mean, I do think Bryant's in play just because he's so cheap, 3,200. Irv Smith's 3K. People like to play him as well. And then if Higbee didn't play last night on Monday Night Football. If he were to miss this game against Miami, Everett at 37, he scored last night. I mean, I think Everett's kind of good. So there are some decent cheap options, but yeah, I mean, early look. If I can play Waller, I would love to do that.
For the record, if you are new to watching this, thank you. We appreciate it. Give us, the good old like, thumbs up, whatever it is these days on YouTube, Apple, all that jazz. But Ben and I always talk about real quick. You want to pay down at tight end. I mean, generally, like 8.5, 9 out of 10 podcasts we do pay down at tight end. Generally speaking, I'm telling you this week, Darren Waller 5,600. It's not as expensive as you think. Again, just looking at the slate, some of these slates, it's like you can tell it's like, wow, I'm really gonna have to get cheap in certain places. I mean, I'll take my cheapy wide receivers this week and move on, honestly. Like, I need Darren Waller in my lineup this week, especially if I'm going Derek Carr with the correlation. Not that that's a huge deal, but I do think this is a week that you definitely can pay up for Waller at 56.
Yep.
All right, let's finish up at tight end, or excuse me, at defense. What are you looking at defense, Ben?
Yeah, last week, dude, Washington, we nailed that on this pod. It was such an easy play, man. I mean, that
Yeah,
was like the
the
easiest
best.
play of all time. I just played them in pretty much every lineup that I made.
Everything. Yeah, same.
Yeah, it
I
was.
know I don't do that often, but I was like,
No,
whoa,
I don't either,
I'm just playing
especially with
Washington
defense. But
everywhere.
yeah, it was easy.
Yeah.
I think the Browns honestly stick out. Not that like this is where the misconception comes with defense. Like
Yeah.
people think, oh, they're gonna, it's gonna be a shootout. I can't play them. You actually want defenses in shootouts because it's more opportunities for sacks and
Right.
turnovers. They still managed 7 points last week, giving up almost, over 30 points. They're good at getting turnovers, man. They're good at getting turnovers and they're good at getting sacks with Miles Garrett. So especially if Brown is still out for Oakland or Las Vegas, excuse me. We'll have to wait and see. That's a positive, but I think 2,600 at home is a good price for the Browns.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting call. They're cheap. There's not too many other this week I will say looks fairly, not fun picking the defense on Russian roulette style. Like again, you know me, I'm not afraid to pay 2,100 for the freaking Bengals, even though I know on paper, yeah, it's an atrocious play. I'm just saying, like, it's not as bad as you think, kind of like what Ben's inferring. These teams at the end of the day are all going to score, 3 to 7 points generally. Um, Even if that. But really for me, it comes down to I make the best lineup and I kind of see what defenses left, and generally it's one of the cheapy guys like Miami. I don't know, 2,400. I'm not opposed to playing Miami this week. I'm not opposed to playing Detroit, although Indy, even though they are run heavy, I mean Rivers is talk about dust and wash. I mean that guy just will gift you 1 to 2 interceptions and a couple sacks because he's so slow. So Detroit's in play. Miami's in play, heck, Cincinnati, Cleveland, of course, but it seems like I'm going too heavy with Oakland, so I probably won't, even though, to your point, Ben, you shouldn't have to worry about that. All right. Anything else, Ben? We're heading to the halfway point of the season here, so kind of crazy, awesome. Freaking love that we've actually made it. It's been a wild year in 2020. I didn't know for sure we were going to make it to this point in the season, but here we are.
Yeah, I'm just excited for this week, man. And if you haven't picked up a package yet, we have affordable pricing. This is a good week to sign up because I know you and I are both a little angry. Get the narrative play this weekend, so I'm just excited to get
Oh,
back to
yeah.
work.
Love it. All right, guys. Thanks again. Appreciate it. Good luck this week, and we'll see you next week.